The United States and Iran are close to an agreement that could end the war and open tougher nuclear negotiations with Tehran. This Wednesday, May 6, 2026, the pressure increased because the White House believes it is close to a one-page memorandum with 14 points to declare the end of hostilities, release frozen Iranian funds through negotiation, and impose limits on the regime's nuclear program. The proposal involves $20 billion in blocked funds, a moratorium on uranium enrichment, gradual sanctions relief, and a new 30-day phase to finalize the details of the agreement. Nothing has been signed yet, but this is the closest they've come since the beginning of the war. I'll tell you all about that in a moment, but right now, you'll want to be subscribed to the channel to stay well informed with real-time information at the highest journalistic quality ever seen, with the highest level of credibility. The negotiation is being conducted by American envoys connected to Donald Trump, including Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, with Iranian authorities and mediators, especially Pakistan. Washington's logic is simple. Stop the fighting, reopen the Strait of Hormuz, ease the shock in the energy market, and at the same time prevent Iran from continuing to have free access to enriched nuclear material. The White House. Iranian responses on key points are expected in the next 48 hours, while Islamabad and Geneva are being considered as possible locations for the next round of negotiations. The most sensitive issue is uranium. According to circulating information, Washington wants to take almost 2,000 kilos of enriched uranium out of Tehran's hands, including about 450 kilos with 60% purity. It's not yet the level used in nuclear weapons, but it's dangerously close to the technical threshold that worries Israel, the United States, and several Gulf nations. That's why the release of $20 billion doesn't appear to be just a simple diplomatic gift. It comes in as a bargaining chip to force Iran to make a real concession, limit enrichment, accept stronger inspections, and reduce the nuclear threat. According to Reuters, more than 3,000 people have died inside Iran, according to the Iranian Forensic Authority. In Israel, missiles launched from Iran and Lebanon killed 23 people, while 13 US soldiers were killed and more than 300 were injured, according to data cited by Reuters itself. In the Strait of Hormuz, Marco Rubio stated that at least 10 civilian sailors died during the maritime crisis. The agreement comes because the war has reached a point of maximum pressure. Iran was unable to escape the military and economic siege, but still maintained leverage in the Strait of Hormuz. The United States managed to hit hard, but also began to face the cost of keeping ships, planes, and troops on permanent alert. With thousands of people trapped on vessels in the Gulf and hundreds of ships waiting to pass, the war moved beyond the military sphere and hit the whole world in the wallet. Rubio stated that about 23,000 people from 87 nations were on ships trapped in the region. It was in this context that Trump temporarily suspended Project Liberty, the American operation to guide vessels through the Strait of Hormuz, but the military pressure did not end. The American Navy continued the blockade of Iranian ports, and the message was clear: Tehran can choose to negotiate now or face a heavier response if it tries to use Hormuz as a weapon against global trade. Iran, however, is still trying to project defiance. A spokesperson linked to the National Security Committee of the Iranian parliament called the release terms an American wish list. And sources interviewed by the New Arab said that the talks have not yet reached the point of producing a final agreement. This detail shows that Tehran is trying to buy time, test limits, and avoid appearing defeated in front of its own population. But the reality is harsh. Without easing the blockade, without recovering some of the frozen money, and without reducing American pressure, the regime becomes more isolated and more expensive to sustain. The difference between this proposal and previous agreements lies in the method. In 2023, during the Biden administration, the United States allowed the transfer of $6 billion from Iranian funds in South Korea to Qatar as part of a prisoner exchange. The government's defense was that the money could only be used for humanitarian trade under supervision. Even so, the agreement became the target of heavy criticism. Because Tehran came out of the negotiation with hostages exchanged, funds unlocked, and little visible strategic cost. After the Hamas attacks against Israel, the United States and Qatar agreed to block, at that moment, Iran's access to those resources. Now Trump is trying to present another model. Money only comes in if there are nuclear restrictions. Sanctions relief only comes with concessions, and the end of the war does not erase the demand regarding enriched uranium. It's a negotiation with pressure at the table. It's not trust in Tehran, it's pressure. The proposal turns the $20 billion into a tool to force a nuclear cap, and not as a random gesture to please the regime. That's the most important point. Iran wants money, wants an economic way out, and wants to reopen its path in the Gulf. The United States wants uranium out of immediate reach, oversight, and a long period of restrictions. Historical memory helps us understand the significance of this moment. In 1981, the Algiers Accords ended the American hostage crisis in Iran. In that case, the release of the Americans came along with the unfreezing of Iranian assets and the creation of mechanisms to handle financial disputes between the two nations. History shows that Tehran usually negotiates when frozen funds, external pressure, and political survival are all on the table. The difference now is that the focus of the negotiation is not just hostages or old debts, it's open war, the Strait of Hormuz, enriched uranium and nuclear risk. Another example comes from the 2015 nuclear deal when Iran agreed to limit parts of its nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief, including in the oil sector. The problem is that model depended on trust, oversight, and long-term political calculation. In 2018, Trump withdrew the United States from the deal, the sanctions returned, and Iran began to advance again. No enriquecimento. The lesson for Washington is straightforward. A deal with Tehran only works if there is strong verification, swift punishment, and a clear advantage for those who comply. Examples from other nations also reinforce this logic. Muammar Gaddafi's Libya agreed to abandon its weapons of mass destruction program in 2003 after years of sanctions and isolation. South Africa dismantled its military nuclear program before rejoining the international community. North Korea, on the other hand, took a different path. It negotiated, bought time, and kept its nuclear infrastructure as a political shield. This is the warning for Trump. If the deal with Iran doesn't have real inspections, strict deadlines, and clear consequences, Tehran might use the pause as a breather, not as diplomatic surrender. What happens now depends on Iran's response. If Tehran accepts the basis of the memorandum, the war could enter a phase of formal suspension. With 30 days to detail the nuclear pact, release part of the funds, ease maritime restrictions, and make passage through the Strait of Hormuz safer. If Iran rejects it, the United States may resume blockades, increase sanctions, and put military operations back on the table. The Anadolu report itself points out that Washington would keep the option to restore the blockade or resume military actions if the talks collapse. For Trump, the agreement is an attempt to get out of the war without giving victory to the Iranian regime. For Iran, it's a chance to get some economic breathing room without admitting complete defeat. For the world, it's the possibility of reducing the threat to oil, trade, and navigation in the Gulf. But the key remains the same. The frozen money will only make a difference in the crisis if it comes tied to real nuclear limits. Without that, the $20 billion just become fuel for the next round of tensions. With oversight and pressure, they can become the price paid to end a war that has already left people dead, ships stranded, and the Middle East on high alert. I'm Milson Alves, an international affairs expert, and my purpose is to keep you well informed with the truth every day. The news links are in the video description. Leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and at the end, check out the comments so you can be even more engaged with the Milson Alves community.